All right, episode 31 of the Lucas Grandsire podcast. Like we know, super creative name, super creative guy. But our guest today is actually creative, so I'm sure you cringe hearing about all this. But it is the great MMA artist, Chris Rini. What's going on, sir? How are you?
Lucas, thank you for having me on, man. I'm doing great.
Of course, I'm excited. With this podcast, you like to get different guests. Some guys can be kind of boring, but you try to bring on guys that have interesting. But for you, it's like you're a niche within a niche, and you found the thing that makes you stand out from everybody else.
Yeah, I found my moment. It's kind of funny. Yeah, I've definitely have been like at a party. It's been a while since I've been at a party,
Yeah,
but
right.
but I remember one time, being up in Harlem, and I'm like, I do editorial cartooning about cage fighting, and this woman's like, screw my job. And she was like, seriously, like a neurologist. She's like, yo, I want to hear what you're doing. It's good, man. It's good. You tell people you're an artist, and you tell them you make art about cage fighting. They're like, yeah, I want to know more about that.
Exactly, because it's like, first of all, sometimes you have to explain what cage fighting is. Some people would think like, is it like karate inside of it? It's not quite that. Is it that thing we saw in Friends? It's like, maybe we get updated a little bit. So
Yeah.
I assume when you got to combine the artist on top of it, there's got to be a lot of question marks.
Yeah, you're definitely asking, do you know what this is? At the same time, you're telling them what it is that you do. Yeah,
Exactly.
a little bit of that.
Well, that's how it is for my grandparents. Like for them, they now refer to it as that weird boxing thing that you seem to talk to athletes about. And it's like, you know what? As long as you don't think it's wrestling, well, I'll
Yeah,
take it. I'm not going to
yeah,
argue with you about it.
yeah. My family's like, you got a roof, right? You got
Yeah,
a roof. You take care of those kids. You good. You good. Keep it up.
exactly. Exactly. That's what it is. Or it's like, can you make a living with this thing? What is this? Then,
Yeah,
since I have the world famous, the foreign grandparents, like, are you getting paid to do this thing? And it's
yeah. Oh,
like,
no, yeah.
kind of, right? Like,
Yeah.
it can be tough sometimes.
No, I understand. I've been like the black sheep of my family for a long
Yeah.
time. So uh, I guess in a way, this is like the perfect place for me. Like a weird mix of sports. I'm a weird mix of a person. I'm in. This is where I was meant to be. This is what I was meant to do.
So the thing you were meant to do, of course, you did come out with this great book, The Art of well, tell us exactly Art of Fine Violence. Like I always mess up all the words in it.
All right. It is called The Fine Art of Violence,
I see.
Volume 2. It just came out this month. Actually, in May, the end of May, the pre-order went up.
And so how long does it take to create something like that? Because you have not only the art you have to do, but you're collaborating with all these people. Some writers can be a little bit, procrastinators and stuff like that. How long did it take you to create this thing?
Technically, it takes a year to make a book because each book starts on January 1st and it ends on December 31st. One of the major ideas behind it is that MMA doesn't have a season. It's kind of a hamster wheel of a schedule, and you can get burnt out. But I find that fans come in and they become a part of the sport for a period of time. Sometimes it's because they're in love with the fighter, and then that person's career ends and they leave, and then sometimes they stay. But oftentimes people have a period in time where MMA is like a major part of their consumption, their lives, their attention, their enjoyment, whatever you want to call it. And I wanted to create a way to capture that moment, and I started in 2019, and that turned out to be an amazingly good year because you had like the comeback of Nate Diaz and the explosion, the creation of Jorge Masvidal of Street Jesus. So I had these fantastic storylines and characters that organically came about. And I say it's the fine art of violence because I am a fine artist. By that I mean, I went to college to study museum artwork, galleries, the gallery scene in New York City, that's where I'm from. And a lot of the artwork in the book, even though it's in my style, it references art history. And that's some of the prompts that I give the writers for the essays that they write tie into that. Poor Josh Rosenblatt, he wrote 10 essays in volume 1. I only found out afterwards. He's like, oh man, this guy's talking to me about art history. I don't know anything about it. I had to study it to get on Wikipedia and learn about these things so I could write about them. So I really, so there's a lot of that allegorical storytelling things weaving within there. Whether sometimes it's the story wise, and sometimes it's just visual. There are certain visual things that make the artwork make more sense. I could tell you more about it, but let me let you ask some questions. Go on and on.
Do you ever feel like it's too fancy for MMA fans sometimes? Because we hear about, like, people they love crap in the MMA world, right? Like the two sloppy heavyweights on the card you haven't heard of. People are like, we're gonna eat that up. And then for you, you're like, it's influenced through this. I went to school for that. It's in this kind of style. For MMA fans, it's like, face punching sometimes. I assume a lot of this stuff does get lost for like the average person.
Yeah, for sure. But you know what? I had a guy walk up to me. He's a PR guy. He's used to do PR for Glory. He put me in my place a couple years ago. I had a booth at the Javits Center in New York for an MMA expo, and he walks up to me and he's like, "Your stuff is too highbrow for these fans." And it was like a knife in my heart because I knew he was right. He was right, and that's why I make a book now. This is like a brutal truth, but it's like there's the idea of owning a book that's just going to turn a certain fan away, and that's a fan who is never going to get my shit, just like you said. And then there's a fan who's like, a book? I mean, dude, that is it's like what is the word? Like the bait, like the bird seed, and like you put the right seed out, the right bird comes, and like, I got a book here. Like, oh, a book. That is something I'm interested in. Boom. I found my fan. I found my person who wants to read an essay by Chuck Mindenhall talking about the end of Jose Aldo's dreams. I found that person. They're out there. It is a niche. It's a cottage industry, but honestly, I'm secretly making evergreen stuff so that book fan 10 years from now is going to want the book that I put out today. The whole point of this is to make stuff that stands the test of time.
Well, I think that's the cool thing too that you did touch on earlier too. It's like a time capsule, right? Like we look back 20 years from now, like this was a year in MMA, and then when you read the essays, you look at the art, and it takes you back, and that's the cool thing. It's not like right now if you're in it. Even back then, it's going to be a piece of history, and especially with the way you made it.
Oh yeah, and also like looking at video or photos, sometimes it gets colored. Like, yes, there's a certain novelty to seeing like the old ads, guns.com, Condom Depot. It gives you it gives especially older fans like a certain nostalgia. But like as time goes by, you run the risk of it seeming dated, or just like, to me personally, it just clutters the visuals. It clutters the landscape. So the point of this book is to strip away everything. With very small exceptions, when it's like integral to the story of the picture, I edit out everything: tattoos, the ref, the cage, the crowd. This is about the human body. This is about those fighters, and so much gets tacked onto them. They get exploited both financially and psychologically. The UFC wants the brand to be more important than the fighter themselves. So I don't ever draw the UFC logo on the gloves. These are all very conscious things. I want you to think about the human body in front of you. So that's what's going on.
No, it's very interesting. Plus, I feel like if you were to do the "Eat Clean, Bro" across a girl's ass, like that kind of logo that we're seeing more and more like in Bellator, I feel like that would take away from the fine art. You'd write it, and it's like it doesn't feel. But for you, it really goes straight to the violence and the people that are involved, rather than hey, check it out, we were in Reeboks. Nah, it's really about the fights in this case.
Yeah, what? Why are you tuning in to see the Reebok logo? Are you tuning in to see the UFC logo even? Are you really? And then Volume 3, which I'm making right now, I'm so excited that there are more promotions active now. And it's like, oh man, I got Rory McDonald, John Lineker, Eddie Alvarez, Demetrius Johnson. These people matter. At the end of the day, especially, a decade from now, do you think Demetrius Johnson getting TKO'd by a grounded knee, that's important? That's it tells something about the evolution of a man and what the sporting landscape looked like back then or today, versus viral Contender Series knockout that might have had more viewers. Like, let's be honest.
But it's interesting because I feel like you strip away the bullshit in these sort of in these drawings and things like that. But you're also you're part of the media, right? Because you do work for Bloody Elbow and stuff like that. How
Yeah.
much bullshit do you see like as part of the industry? Like sometimes I feel like some storylines like you're really like pulling something out of your ass and stuff like that. How much bullshit do you see like leading up to these fights that takes away from, at the end of the day, we're watching two people step into a cage to do some violence.
Well, I kind of joke about so you're talking about the cartoon. I do editorial cartoons for Bloody Elbow. And the name of the cartoon series is called MMA Squared.
Yep.
Because, like it's a mathematical joke. It's MMA about MMA. And I guess I feel like the bullshit, like you say, like is the reason I have this job. Like I essentially like hold up a mirror to like what's happening. Like the UFC especially is the primary focus of my work because editorial cartoons are supposed to speak truth to power, point out I actually have to email the Wikipedia definition of what an editorial cartoon is because I get some angry emails who people think I should be like stroking them off. And I'm like, look, buddy, this is what I'm doing. And every once in a while, people are like, oh, okay, I didn't know that. I didn't even know that was a thing, So I'm like, oh, great. Like sometimes people are not just dicks online. They're just uninformed. And they're like, hey, I would love to know more. So I always joke, MMA is especially on the PR side. Like what happens before a fight is a fucking trash fire. And I'm just like putting I'm putting a picture frame around it. I'm like, hey, heads up, burning bright today.
Yeah, exactly. I have to say, my favorite MMA squared of yours, it has to go back 2 years ago, and that was when during the summer when Chael Sonnen and Luke Thomas had their beef. I know it's silly. Like I wish I could say something small like this that brought out but that one, because I remembered it was like Chael Sonnen's was like, I'm charismatic, and Luke Thomas like, yeah, but I'm right. And when I saw it, I was like, this is so accurate. Like there's no like this is exactly, if we were to put it on one picture, that tells us exactly what's going on.
Oh man, I'm so happy to hear that. Thank you so much. I don't know if I get a lot of, I get some praise about the more fantastical things, but I hope that I can provide like a look behind the curtain,
Yeah.
But I'm playing like a magic trick because I'm like, I'm going to tell you what's behind the curtain and you're going to believe me because I'm not behind the curtain, Although I did get to meet Luke, before the pandemic started, and he had some really nice things to say. I was really impressed. I was assuming he wouldn't even know who I was, and he did, and I was like, holy shit, this is, oh wow.
I mean, we were talking about Luke Thomas with Brian Campbell last time because obviously it's kind of like they're going to be linked forever. They're the Michael Jordan or the Scottie Pippen. I'm sorry to say that to a New York guy, but
no, it's okay. It's okay. You know who I hate more than the Bulls are the fucking Knicks. Those guys that killed me, killed me.
Oh man. I mean, I was watching everybody on Twitter get excited for it, but now we're back down to earth. Spike Lee's back where it's sad. But now to get back to it though, Luke Thomas, he comes off as like this guy, like you feel like if you were to meet him, you'd have to apologize because it's like, he comes off as this, like, if you come at me, you better be ready with what you're gonna say. Like, how was it for you meeting, a guy that, unfortunately is smaller than Nate Diaz, but Luke Thomas, I feel like he's an intimidating figure in MMA.
Oh yeah, totally. But you know what? I had met a bunch of the people from like the MMA fighting staff a couple years ago, like Esther and Casey and Chuck Mindenhall, and curiously, like all separately, but hey, did you meet Luke? And I was like, nope, never even spoken with him. So when people speak like that about someone, that there's like a redeeming aspect that they like.
Yeah.
When somebody has friends who care about them, you're like, you're probably all right. So it was fine. I was at a media symposium in DC, and it was a really great experience. I got to meet a handful of I saw Karen Bryant speak. She was fantastic. Oh yeah. Man, she was killer. Yeah. I didn't have a good grasp of her background and more like how her role is in the media, and I have a profound respect for her now.
Well, when you meet someone like Luke Thomas, because you both have, these magnificent beards, is there like a moment where you kind of do a standoff and there's like an understanding of looking at everyone's handiwork on their face? Like, I feel like you guys have to talk about that.
It was a very brief encounter. And I usually, people only talk about my beard when it's like down here, you know,
Yeah.
and then it's just like, I'm like, yo, let's do this. I don't care. But I always joke, man. I was like, I would probably trade it for the hair back on my head if I had the opportunity. I'm like, I do miss that. I used to have like, as big as my beard was, my hair on my head was even bigger.
I feel like that's the story for a lot of people. Like you see them like in their prime, it's like they have all this hair, and then today it's like the hair shifted down below the face. But you have to do something, right? Even I have to think strategically. Like when this comes to an end, like hopefully
Yeah,
the follicles start, getting to work.
seriously. Best of luck. Best of luck, man.
But so the symposium, like, so what are you guys doing exactly? Because I've seen it. It's like you guys are fielding questions and stuff like that. But it seems like, it's odd for it to be MMA specifically. Like, it feels like once again a niche within a niche. But like, what are you guys doing at this sort of thing?
I would recommend to you or anyone out there to follow Nancy Kidder, Kidder. She's a professor at American University, and she created a class, at the college about writing and fighting. And it's kind of not that dissimilar from what I do, where you're like, you love something, fighting, and then you have your academic background, whether art or writing, and you find a way to put them together and build a career out of it. And she's teaching, undergrads about, the art of creative writing, maybe nonfiction writing, and through the lens of combat, whether it's how the creation of the Rocky screenplay to, the UFC and, MMA right now. She organized it. She got all those people together and she blew it out of the water. It was just a great experience. I took the train down from New York and was in and out in a couple hours, and it was worth every moment of my time.
I feel like the reason you can do something like that too is also because of how accessible people are. We always mention the fighters and stuff, but the media too. You shoot someone an email, can I get some advice? They're gonna answer you. Like I feel like
Yeah.
you have to use that to your advantage for something like this, especially with for someone like me. It's like that sounds like the dream class.
Yeah. It is. I agree. I have found almost everyone really accessible. I was shocked. A couple of years ago, I had like an hour-long DM conversation with Jordan Breen, and I'm like, dude, this is out of control. This dude's just shooting shit with me. Well, like, this is really obscure shit I like, and he's like, yeah, I know something 1,000 times, more obscure, but he shares your passion, and it's like, you're in. You want to talk about that? I'm totally down. Like that is really nice. I've met a couple people, and I've been really pleasantly surprised that their demeanor on camera and in person are strikingly similar.
So how long did it take you to get the respect of people in the industry, the fan stuff for what you do? Like people, because for a while sometimes you're just making content, nobody really pays attention. But now you've reached a point where it's like, okay, MMA Squared, the book, and everything like this. I mean, this is some legit stuff. How long did it take you to get that respect to where you're at today?
Well, they say it takes 10 years to become an overnight sensation. And I've been thinking about that for 9.5 years. In June of 2022, it'll be 10 years since I decided to make MMA the focus of my artwork. So, it took a minute. You know what? The second book, I feel it. I feel the difference. More people respond to me. More people are like, just you start to see that people are aware, and like I don't know, I guess I feel like anybody you could pull it together to make a book, to record an album, to make a viral hit. You do it again, then like I feel the difference.
So what's been the most important thing for you in your career? Like it seemed like Bloody Elbow, that was a big one too, because it did put you on like a big platform attached to like a media thing. What was it that what was the thing that sort of made you stand out and then kind of sent you? Because it feels like there's always, when you're doing stuff like this, there's the one thing that really propels you. And then it's up to you to kind of use that to, keep everything
Yeah.
going.
The number one biggest thing was learning how to budget my energy and my patience and my production. I heard some great advice on a podcast called Dirty Old Ladies, which is these three women that make comics. And one of them said, if you're like the greatest artist out there and everyone loves your work, but it takes you 3 months to make a page, per page, for a comic, I'll admire you from afar. More power to you. However, if you're a mediocre artist but you never miss a deadline, I'll have work for you for the rest of your life. And I was really struck by that. I was like, okay, this is a person who approaches art from a business perspective, and they're telling me how to thrive. So that's how I created MMA Squared. I was like, I'm not going to obsess about art quality. I have a message. I have a word. I have an idea that I want to say, and I'm going to do it a mix of cartooning and commentary. And I'm just going to put it out regularly. And so when I started, and I was doing it independently, just on Twitter, I made sure that I told everyone, I was like, yo, be back here Thursday at noon. I was telling people that along with the content that I would be producing it regularly on a schedule. And I think that really mattered because, Kid Nate reached out to me, said he wanted to publish them, and I kept with the weekly schedule. And then about 9 months in, I talked with him about it. I want to do it every day. And, I had like a 9-month track record of success, of some sort. And he took a gamble on me. And I followed through. I don't miss deadlines. I think I asked for a delay of 1 day once because I think the legal department rejected my they were like, you can't publish that. That's getting a little dicey. And I was like, all right. Can I? It's like 1 o'clock in the morning. I'm tired. I got kids. Can I just publish tomorrow instead? And they're like, yeah, no problem. So anyway, if you can find a way to be consistent, that's what landed me a full-time gig at Bloody Elbow. And that's what netted me enough income to finance the book. And then I could do things my own way. I could finance my own vision to make this book series. And now the key is consistent. Again, you make the low art, the cartoons consistently, you get paid for that, and then you use it to finance the high-end stuff. Now be a little more consistent and grow it like you really manicure that tree, make it be the best it can be.
Well, that's the interesting thing about consistency is we hear a lot of the content makers. It goes for you as an artist. It goes for people that make videos, writing and stuff. It's always that consistency. Like if you make something, you disappear for 3 months, 6 months, whatever. It's like,
Yeah.
you're obscure, but if you can prove yourself, and that you're pushing all by yourself, it seems like that's, obviously if what you're doing is good, but like if you can prove that you can keep doing that and stay motivated,
Yeah,
I feel like that's a big key in this industry.
it is. I started out doing animation of MMA stuff, and it was just like a feast or famine way of doing things. You get all this praise and all this attention when you put something out, and then you go into like a multi-month long hiatus of like not having that pop hit level work. And I suppose if I had been better about, or had the time or the knowledge to stream or chronicle the making of stuff as it was happening, I possibly could have capitalized on it that way. Like you watch this person make each frame and then check up on them once a week or something, and then 2-3 months down the line they put out a fully finished animation. That would have been, in hindsight is 2020. But now I'm going to try and do that again with the making of the book. That's a lesson from the past I intend to correct.
So the thing for you is a lot of what you do is, obviously you're getting paid for, you're doing it full time, but it seems like a lot of this is passion too. Like the passion runs out. That's kind of an issue. A lot of people talk about you got to stay motivated and stuff, but motivation, it comes and goes. It's not always, in France, that was a word I used to hear all the time. I was like, motivation. It's like, come on, it's not that simple. You're not just always motivated. For you, how do you stay motivated? How do you keep that passion to, no matter what, because it gets difficult. How do you stay motivated? How do you keep, that passion going and creating stuff so consistently?
Well, not to sound haughty, but it's like I literally am an artist. No matter what I do, no matter where I am, like that's who I am in my bones. I've been like that from a very young age. Also, I'm a complete failure at academics and athletics, and this is the one area in life where I know that I have something that other people don't. So it's very intertwined with me as a person. But on top of that, like motivation is like, you know, a fraction of the equation, and discipline is a far bigger, you know, it's like motivation's like the icing on the cake, and like the body of it is discipline. You know, the motivation collapses without discipline.
So are you starting to have people nipping at your heels now? Like, are you having more and more artists that are starting to creep up? And it's like, obviously everyone has their style, but it's like, you're the number one guy doing it. Like, you ask other people, they're gonna have trouble finding other artists. But when people see that you're successful, you're gonna reach a point where you're gonna have a lot of imitators.
That's okay. I honestly, like, guess what? The best of them will be in the book. This isn't just a showcase of my own work. I have two other artists in volume 2. Volume 1, I did all myself just to make sure, you know, your vision gets realized. Volume 2, I reached out to Gorilla the Bear on Twitter, aka Adam Nelson, and Edward Cow, who's kind of famous for, you know, Sean El-Shadi's long form work. His artwork always accompanies him. And I was like, hey, I want to put you guys together again. So there's plenty of people who are better than me at stuff. You know, someone's better at rendering, or, you know, they have better color sense than I do. Mine is actually pretty horrid. But no one's going to be me, you know. You know, there's going to be plenty of artists who can do a great picture, but none of them are going to make MMA squared. You know, like you can have all the technical skill in the world, but you need to be like a fully formed person. And, you know, I'm probably never gonna make a walkout shirt for a fighter because I have pissed off the UFC, you know, or but it's like I'm gonna be somebody who's spoken their mind, and the things that I did are something that I hopefully can be proud of, you know, because I called it like I saw it.
So something in MMA that it's sort of in the artist realm that we see get shit on a lot is the UFC fight posters. Obviously, I've got two behind me, but that seems to be the one where it's like no matter what, people are gonna shit on it no matter what. Obviously, that's not the art you do, but there is like at the same time, it's supposed to be art. What's your take on stuff like that? Like, are you shitting on it the same way as everybody else, or do you see things kind of from a different lens?
I think it's the UFC has been painted into a corner, because those posters are simultaneously supposed to be some sort of artistic representation, but they're also supposed to like serve a purpose, and you know, they're functional. They're both form and function, and they're so obviously. All right, here's the best way to put it. It's not that they're bad. It's that they're so obviously formulaic. And I think that's what gets under people's. I don't think MMA fans are en masse are craving the amazing ideas behind the Pride posters. You know, I think that a certain type of fan appreciates those because they're magnificent. You know, but the UFC's whole brand identity is to take itself fucking seriously. They can't laugh at themselves, you know, and they've painted themselves into a corner because they have to make these posters all the time. They can't let the fighters have too much personality or to get too big. And let's be honest, they could let them get a little bigger. Okay. Like, you know, they've been pushed so far under their thumb. They're like, you know, 3 inches underground. It's the formulaicness that makes people dislike the posters more than the poster itself. It's like the unimaginativeness and the committing to being unimaginative that hurts.
I always kind of feel bad for the artists because I feel like, if you could like unleash these guys, I'm sure they could do something great. But at the same time, like they know, like, hey, listen, in this one, we want either half of one guy's face merged with the other half, or most of the time, it's just two guys standing there trying to look tough. And I feel like even for them, it's like you're like you said, you're putting them in a corner, you're limiting what they can do, and then it makes them look bad. Even though I'm sure if they had free reign, they could do something a lot better.
Yeah, it's difficult because you have to ask yourself, like, I don't know. Like there are fighters who are creative and interesting, and they have a dynamism to it and are charisma. And I don't know how you square that up with, just straight up athletes. I honestly think it's because there's so little competition for the UFC that they're in a, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And I think if there were another promotion that were nipping at its heels, you would see a bit more creativity. I got to think it's a bit of complacency.
Yeah, exactly. Like if Bellator were to come out with these great posters and the great fight cards which people enjoy shitting on and stuff like that, yeah, you'd be forced to do something a little bit better because Bellator's coming. But off the top of my head, I could not name a single Bellator poster. I couldn't even imagine one in my own
Yeah,
head.
yeah, I understand. I think there's a way to address the UFC poster situation, but I'll do it myself. I have an idea for it, and we'll see if I can pull it off.
So is this a serious, like, is this a serious thing? You have some kind of something going on, like a certain project idea
Oh
for
yeah,
this
yeah,
poster?
dude. I've wanted to do it for years, like since 2013. I've been dying to do this, and I haven't had the platform, but things are going really well now. I hope to have it out in the next, I don't know, maybe I'll put it in like volume 4 or something like that. Yeah, that's where we are. That's where we are. I got it. I got the
wheels are turning.
idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, the posters are complicated too because I've seen some like some of the artists, right, that they create their own poster, but the issue a lot of them have is there's too much going on. Like you almost forget that it is a fight poster. Like when there's way too much, or some guys throwing too many animals and things like that, and you're like, is this a circus or am I looking at a fight? Like it's a fine line between this is still a promotional poster that is going to stand the test of time, and look, we threw in a bear because that fighter likes to maul people.
Yeah, yeah. MMA really does love a metaphor when it's like lowest common denominator. When it's like, no, not lowest common denominator. When it's viral, if they can get their hands on a viral idea, they'll beat it into the ground.
But the one I have to say was cool, which I believe Matthew Wells made it, was the Stipe when he had the firefighter hose, and then Francis Ngannou coming out with the fire. That one, it was like, okay, that's dope. Like I can't argue with that, and that's a really cool looking poster. And it's like you got the Predator against the firefighter. Like, all right, that one's definitely good.
Yeah, that was really badass. It's there. The ideas are there. They're available. If only they would just do 2 posters. Just do 2 per pay-per-view. God forbid I say every event. Do 2. Do the one that you always do, and then just like flex. Just flex every time. Watch, see if the sales roll in. Like do a year of market research.
Because I do have to say for the posters, like, because there is this idea that people are going to buy them. These 2 posters I have behind me, those were obtained through Buffalo Wild Wings for free. Like after eating a very mediocre burger, like, you know what I mean? I'm not going to go out there and spend like 50 or whatever crazy amount for a poster. Like if I can get it for free and I have to wrestle a drunk guy to get one, I'm going to do that because it's free.
Yeah. Also, I bet there's a certain fan maybe who would take that free poster and then one day go to a fan event, and try and get it signed by the guy on the poster, So yeah, they get you money one way or the other.
Yeah, exactly. When you look back at this book, like I know I have an obvious favorite, like one of the posters that I really like, and that's the Volkanovski Holloway. I think that's probably my favorite. Like the way it looks, I just the instant I saw it, I was like, okay, that's the one for me. Do you have one? I feel like for you love all of them, but is there one that kind of stands out to you? And you're like, yeah, that one's my favorite.
Of my own personal work?
In the book.
Oh, in the book. I love the Joanna versus I love the portrait of Joanna Jędrzejczyk. It's a charcoal one. I don't do a lot of portraiture, and that one I felt great about. I just sat down. I joked with somebody too. I was like, you know how long that took? 20 minutes. It takes like, you can make like 100 drawings, and it doesn't matter how long you spend on them. You just like, when it's right, it's right. It takes no time at all. Yeah, that's kind of a comical one. I'm trying to think what else is really cool. I like there's a story behind the Dominic Reyes and John Jones piece. John Jones is throwing his oblique kick, but Reyes is throwing the counter left, and Jones is like, oh crap, I love that one. That is the story of his career at that moment. Like the other light heavyweights finally caught up. I think more people say that Reyes won that fight than people think Gustafsson won the first fight. or as many. And it's like, it's not as remarkable, but it's like almost, it's a realistic take, it's not so reactionary. It's not so hot, it's just like heads up. People are catching up with John Jones, or people have caught up with John Jones. And like his signature, like people used to freak out about that kick, and he's like, this is how you answer it, So that's one of my favorites. It's got a good theme behind it.
And John Jones, you got to think like that's gonna be a little piece of history, right? Everybody's calling him the GOAT and stuff like that, and it's like I think we never appreciate guys in their prime, and right now we're all on the edge of our seat. Like, is this it?
Yeah.
Is it getting lazy, or have they really caught up to him? Like the John Jones thing is, even now I'm going to heavyweight and stuff. It's very interesting seeing like, are we watching the decline or not? Is this something we go back in the book and we look at it? And it's like we can pinpoint like kind of that was the moment where we thought, ooh, that's not the same John anymore.
Right, exactly. I hope so. I hope that's what this functions as. I hope that the pictures in these books age well. Like you're gonna look at something like, I don't know, Volume 1. There's a great image of one of my favorite images from Volume 1 is Masvidal versus Diaz, and it's possible. Now you don't know, we don't know, but it's possible that 10, 15 years from now, you'll like open up that book, go to that page, like that's literally the peak of that man's career. He headlined Madison Square Garden. He was so hot they invented a belt for him, to fight for. Like it will look different then, because the Askren knockout is kind of the peak that people, virality. But like when you look at his career in totality, that might be it.
Exactly, but you have to capture that storyline within these pictures. Like it's not as simple as here he is throwing a right hook. It's like when we look back on it, you have to be able to. I feel like when you look at it, you go back in your mind a little bit to where you were when you watched that fight or something like that. Like obviously I'm not an artist, but it's got to be something you're trying to capture across these pictures too.
Yeah, I definitely have certain fights where I can remember exactly where I was, what was happening in my life, like who I was around, or just the feelings I had. I think about like the Kane, the second fight between Kane and JDS. That was like when I first got my first taste of like people might be interested in my work, and I was single, and I joined like an MMA meetup group, so we'd like meet at a bar and go watch the fights. And yeah, it's very special. You watch Kane, like you're like, I think this guy might be the best, and he like gets the belt back, and you're like, oh my god, it's amazing. Oh god, like, my life is changing. Yeah, totally. And yeah, I have those moments.
It's literally, we know for Kane that was probably the peak, right? Like you look back on it, it's like what a terrible, terrible end. Like it shouldn't have ended like that. But
Yeah,
you're gonna look back on that one, you're gonna be like, yeah, that was probably when we should have appreciated him the most. Because after that, it's sort of
yeah.
things get really weird, especially fighting Travis Brown of all people. Like things get weird real fast for Cain Velasquez.
That's the weirdest fight of his whole career. I just didn't understand it at all. But threw a wheel kick.
Yeah. I'm thinking that the whole time I'm thinking about the fight is, oh yeah, and he threw a wheel kick on 6'7" Travis Brown. But what did you think when you saw him go to WWE? Like I remember just sometimes you'll see guys leave and you're like, you'll be back. But Kane, for me, like when I saw that, it truly felt like this is a guy who was knocking on the door of GOATs, and now he's gone, and we might not appreciate this guy like we once did.
Yeah, I feel bad that his legacy is not more. People always talk about like greatest, I don't know, waste of talent or what if. Like to me, Kane, number one. How he was coming up as I was becoming, the hardcore fan. You make that transition from like, this is a novelty, curiosity to like, I'm obsessed with this sport. I actually watched his career, every fight in order, like a couple times leading up to the Brock Lesnar fight. Oh man. And yeah, you're watching something special. It's borderline McGregor-like the way he dispatched people, and then it was gone. Yeah, it's a sad one for me.
So I feel like anytime you talk to someone that creates content and stuff, the question has to be asked, like, so how did you get into MMA? Like, what was the thing? Like, some people have super interesting stories that are borderline fake. You're like, come on. And some it's like, oh, I saw some face punching and I liked it. Like, what was it for
Yeah,
you?
it's probably in between those two. Definitely like I saw some face punching. I was like totally enjoying it. And then I hit that point where you're like, I don't understand why this guy won. I don't
Yeah.
understand. And then for me, I just started watching old fights when guys really had like one style.
Yeah.
And that was how I became a fan, learning about it, because I was like, because I had hit like my limit of like, I understand a kick to the face. Got it. But then you hit this weird thing where you're like, but this guy's the best striker, but the other one just kept taking him down, huh? That's how they won. So for me, it was like that. The kind of more fun side is that like I was in a band, and then I got to be like about 30 years old, and I quit my band, and I was like, I got like this job as an accountant, and I was working for a hospital that was broke, so they had no money to spend, so I had no work to do, and I just like was like cruising on YouTube all day, and I just like, because I wasn't writing music, I just kind of had a piece of my brain was like ready to flex. I wasn't using it for that anymore. So I was like, this is cool, and it just like a real strange, from like the most boring, like unathletic, unimpressive job of like being an accountant to like be like, yeah, cage fighting. That's what does it for me. It's fun. This is a strange contrast.
I feel like the moment when you've become a hardcore fan is like I was at Buffalo Wild Wings watching with my friends. He's like, man, I have no idea who won as we're waiting for the decision. I'm like, dude, are you serious? 29-28, this guy. And he's like, what does that mean? How do you know that? Oh, come on, man. Like, you won the first, the third, you saw a tape. And then, they announced it. He's like, oh my God. And then I was like, yeah, that's right. I used to watch like, oh, who's going to win? And when you start to know who won, because you understand, the judges may not understand the criteria. We don't either. But when you start getting to that point where it's all predictable because you saw it happen live, that's okay, I'm really starting to understand this sport.
That's a good point. Yeah. I think I go through phases where I'm like, I don't know shit about fighting,
Yeah.
And then sometimes I'll just watch events with just music and no commentator, and it is a totally different experience. Yeah, I like to follow some striking podcasts just to remind myself that like there's a Pacific Ocean of knowledge that I don't have.
You mentioned the commentary. That's how do you feel about the commentary? Like the big joke I'm seeing is people are saying like, oh, they're podcasting, it's turning into a podcast. How do you feel about the commentary? Like it's definitely went through a big change. Do you like it?
Yeah. Well, the good thing is that they have a lot of different people, so you do get different flavors. I've definitely come to enjoy. I've come to find that John Anik is like, that dude is killer.
Yeah.
I learned jiu-jitsu from listening to Joe Rogan. When I went to my first jiu-jitsu class, and they're like, and I'd never done a lick of grappling. I was just like a baby deer. But they're like, all right, get in this guy's half guard. I knew what half guard was from listening to Joe Rogan. Do you think somebody today could have that same experience? I don't. But I do think the game has changed, to a point where, and maybe it's passed him by. You watch George St. Pierre versus Carol Parisian. Rogan's calls are fantastic. He's like calling shit that's gonna happen in 30 seconds, but not like he's gonna get knocked out. I mean, he's like, watch the way this guy is putting his hands. He's gonna, take him down that way, fight out of this Kimura. It is just stellar in comparison. But the game is different now. It's not the same fight it was, and it's okay for the commentary to evolve. Right now, I feel like they are commentating in the hopes of going viral.
Yeah.
That's it feels like that.
I remember my mom, of all people, she used to watch fights like early 2010s. And one of the moments she was like really excited about, she's like, there was a guy stuck in a guillotine. And she said, and the commentator was explaining to us, here's how he can get out of it. And the guy did exactly what the comment. And she's like, it's amazing. It's like, I feel like you want to feel like the commentator knows exactly what's going on more than you do.
Yeah,
and when they're
that's a good
sitting
point.
there, focusing on screaming and holding each other, like you mentioned, they they've created what 3 different viral memes of people that don't follow MMA that use it, and they try to do that, but you do
Yeah.
feel sometimes like they're not paying attention to the fight. Like sometimes some guys, they'll get stuck on something and they'll talk about only that, and you're like, okay,
Yeah.
man, 3 minutes ago, can we focus on what's going on right now? I mean,
Yeah.
it doesn't feel the same like you mentioned, like it once was.
I would say that I'll go back to it. Like, if the fight's boring, fucking kick it back to Anik. That dude is good.
Yes.
If you don't see anything worth talking about, then shut your mouth.
Oh man, yeah, and Anik appreciation. It's like, when you talk about MMA media, you have to, appreciate guys like Luke Thomas, James Lynch, but John Anik, I mean, what an awesome guy. Like, I feel like for a long time he was there and he was the guy, following the rules and stuff. But I feel like today we heard John Anik cuss a few times, and now people are like, oh, this guy, we like this John Anik guy.
He's always been that guy. He's so subtle about it. He's got a level of subtlety that no one else has on that broadcast team. I'll tell you, when I realized it, it was a long time ago. I don't know, 2016 or something like that, where Demetrius Johnson, was talking about, who's going to fight some guy for the title. Maybe Wilson Hayes? No, that's 2017. Anyway, they're like, what's this guy got to do? He's a minus 1,000 underdog.
Could it be Tamilian? Could it have been Tamilian?
Could have been. Yeah, it could have been. And Anik's like, that opening minute, maybe throw a low blow, maybe get in there and like try and sneak in a headbutt, like let this guy know he's in for a fight. I'm not saying to do it, but get him early and let him know that he's in for a rough one. Maybe you can get in his head. I was dying laughing. I was like, I'm gonna love this guy forever. Like, just hearing him talk about the game like that, I just fell for him.
What I love with him is the embracing the Modelo and the P3 stuff. Like he's just out there saying it. Now people, it's like, I had him on the podcast. I was like, so are you munching on P3 and Modelo and stuff? And he's embraced it. Like for him, it's like, you know what? I'm Modelo P3 guy. Just some people would be like, oh, it's just something you have to read. But John Anik, it's like, you guys want me to be the Modelo guy? I'm the Modelo guy.
He's no doubt. You know what? I remember, it's like corn to the core is just like embedded in my brain. It's a part of my DNA now. Like, if you could own it, man, be employed for the rest of your life. I remember years and years ago, a friend of mine saw Guy Fieri. He's like, that guy's going to be employed for the rest of his life because his whole brand is he'll be excited about whatever you want him to be excited about. I was like, oh man.
That's exactly what it is. And, and then John just has this ability, like, a lot of commentators would have been like, eat P3, Modelo. You feel like this guy, he's pounding them. Like he's on the broadcast with a Modelo. Like this guy cares. And, and it's a shame that he's not getting paid by them as a sponsor because this is a guy like you feel like he truly loves it. When in reality, it's like it's on a card and I just got to read this shit.
Yeah. Hey, man. What is it? Like the way you do your least favorite thing in life is the way you do your life. It's one of those things. He's like embracing that. So, man, give it to a pro, right?
Exactly. So who's your favorite commentator? Like, I know we're sitting here talking about the greatness of John Anik, but is there one, like, whether it's John Anik or not, is there one that you can sort of point to? Like, that's the guy, if he's on a broadcast, I really enjoy
my
him.
first, I don't know if I have somebody right now, but especially because they work in tandem, they like, it's like, oh, I like this pairing. Like even like a DC and Dominic Cruz. I like that. But my first favorite commentator was Mauro Ranallo.
Oh yeah. Yep. The Mamma Mia. I remember he had a podcast in Boss Rutan, and that podcast is excellent too. Like I wish we saw more of him. He really is excellent.
Yeah. Hey, maybe we don't deserve him.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So listen, man, getting back to this book, what was like the toughest thing to draw? Like what took you the longest? Like I think people imagine you become a hermit when you work on drawings like that. What was the thing that took the longest and you thought like, I'm never going to finish this thing?
Oh man, let me see. Oh, you know what, Khabib? I had a real hard time doing him, and I ended up having the other two artists do Khabib pieces, and then I just took mine out. I was like, you know what? Let these guys shine. I like their work better than my own. I could be humble like that, Yeah, that was it. The Khabib. I didn't like what I did. I didn't put it in the book.
That's fair.
Yeah.
To get to a more confrontational subject, which writer was the hardest, biggest asshole, pain in the ass to work with? Like, no, I'm just kidding. But how do you like come to these writers and sort of explain like what you're trying to do? Because I feel like not everyone would understand exactly like what the point of these essays are.
Oh, I put my foot in my mouth over and over. For some people, I had a really well thought out concept, and for others, I was way more vague, and I stumbled over my words. I wrote like apology emails. The answer is I learned a lot of hard lessons this time, because the first book I worked with one writer. Once you figure out the formula, boom, you just do it again and again and again. This time you got 7 writers. You got to talk to them 7 different ways, and that was tough. It was not easy. I definitely stumbled a lot.
So how did you pick your 7? Like, I feel one true way of doing that would have been like, who did the Athletic hire 2 years ago, and then you just pick 7, and you know you're right. But how did you pick? Was it based on your relationship? Was there a style you were looking for? How did you pick those guys?
Some people I've admired from afar. I've always wished that my work could be associated with them, and we've kind of talked in the past. Some of them we've met and hung out in the past. So, and then other people, I was like, I just heard something they did, and I was like, oh, you are great. Like Fernanda Prates, like, we've never spoken, but like we follow each other. I see she does great work all the time. I love her podcast with Fanbyte Media. And I heard it. I won't tell you because it's kind of a surprise for people who get the book. She did an interview that was just stellar. I felt like I learned so much about a person in the MMA media who I've known for a long time, but I learned more about them. And I was like, hey, I want you to write an article. I want you to write an essay about this person, And it was very easy to get someone to say yes because all of them, I gave them my first book, and then they could probably feel confident that like, all right, this guy is going to follow through on what he says, this guy made a book. All right, I'll be in the next one. Some people I just totally admired for years, like Eugene S. Robinson, man, he's got one of the great minds of MMA. And I was so grateful that he said yes. And Schwan Humes, he's like a lesser known analyst, but we've spoken in private, and he's a great guy and he's a smart mind. So I was like, can I give this guy a platform? Can I help someone? I don't want to just like get a bunch of people who have more followers than me and just be like, kind of like, can you help me be more successful? Like, can I help someone else be more successful? And that's why the other artists, I want them to have a platform. I don't want just me to be successful. I want art with a capital A to be respected.
So you're currently doing this media tour, which I thought was very smart because some people understand the role of the media is to help get your name out there, help get your work out there, whatever it is. And some fighters don't necessarily understand that. But now that you're, the other way around, you're the one getting interviewed and stuff like that. Are you enjoying that? Or is there a part of you that understands, like, maybe I get why fighters wouldn't want to do this so much?
I mean, it's work, but I really enjoy it. Yeah, I do. I love being surprised. Some podcasts have just been killer. Like they have great questions. They're ready, So the answer is that, man, as long as you get pleasantly surprised every once in a while, it's a good experience. Yeah.
Well, I've been burned by the podcast game a few times where, you'll have like some random or fan or whoever, and they're like, can you come on my podcast? And you're like, yeah, I'm approachable. I'm not an asshole. Let's do it. And then you find out, like, you did a podcast with a crazy guy. Like, it happened to James Lynch and I, where we found out, like, this guy. First of all, like, I'll do it. I'll give you a chance, whatever, first time. But then when you see the final result, where it was, I'm talking on you on a speakerphone in front of the camera, you're like, okay, man, maybe it's not very good. But then goes off on you on Twitter and talks about what a horrible person you are and stuff.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry.
And I were like, what is this? What is going on? Like, I did your podcast. Like, what are you talking about? And so, there's definitely a few times where, like you said, you're pleasantly surprised, and others you're like, oh man, did I just give a crazy person like free content?
Yeah. Well, fortunately, my work is kind of like, what's the word? Like highbrow. So maybe it doesn't resonate as well. I mean, hopefully if I get like a crazy person, they'll be like really wealthy and like, it'll be their vanity thing. I'm like, all right.
Oh man. Well, I feel like you would know instantly the way they're talking about your art too. Like they would say something weird and you're just kind of like, or like, what color do you do for blood and stuff? Like, are you okay, man?
I would hope that I could be that prescient, but we don't know. I'll find out. I'll let you know. When I'm
Exactly.
locked away in someone's private island, like, they won't let me eat unless I draw.
Yeah, it's like we just saw Hasbullah, who's the new guy that we're seeing. It's like I want a picture of him counting his money. It's like, come on, man. It's like, do you want to eat? Do you want to put lotion on your skin? Give me the picture of Hasbullah.
Yeah, yeah, man.
But so I have to know for this art thing, when you get started, like there's no one to tell you like you're gonna make it as a full-time MMA art guy. Like, I mean, you're getting started on this thing, you have no idea.
Yeah.
I mean, how did you think this was gonna be a career path, or is this the kind of thing where like I'm giving myself a timeline and if it doesn't work, we do something else? Like how does that work from that perspective?
It's gonna sound a little crazy, but I did this meditation retreat and I had like a vision, and I believed in it. And I know it's corny to say that, but I really believed in myself. And it was probably the first time in my life I ever did. I was like in my 30s. I was not aware of what that would feel like. And I think about that a lot. I think about, you know, that moment, that feeling, and you're like, that's the kind of thing you need to stay on the path and just be disciplined. You need that tiny bit of belief, of inspiration, of motivation, and then you need this much discipline to make it real.
So when you say meditation retreat, like, is this something? Because some of them we've heard some crazy things where there's like no food and like only water and stuff like that. Like, what does a meditation retreat kind of look like? 'Cause it sounds like if done right, can be something very beneficial.
Yeah, I did what's called Vipassana. And it's actually the same thing that Jonathan Brookins did, the fighter from many years ago. He was on George St. Pierre's Season of Tough. It is intense. 10 days, 10 hours a day of meditating. You're up at 4:30 in the morning. No eye contact, no talking, no reading, no writing, no exercising, no drawing, nothing. And it's a lot of it's guided. It's not like you're alone. There's guidance nonstop. I was like, I'd gotten divorced. I was like, let me get my head together. Let me figure out what I'm gonna do next. So I did that, and all the dust settled. And let those crazy thoughts run wild, and then they're not so crazy anymore. And then you're done. You have an idea, you believe in it, and you go with it. That's kind of where I ended up.
So did that change you as a person doing something like that? Because I feel like we see it more and more where you don't take time to think and meditate and things like that.
Yes, one moment. Could you hit talk and then hit the key button, please? Everyone in my house just showed up, so get a little fire right there. Could you repeat your question? I'm so sorry.
I was just saying, do you come out like a different person when you do something like that, a meditation retreat? Because I feel like you never truly have the time to sit there and sit in your own thoughts.
I came back a calmer person. So yeah, I'm kind of a high-strung person in general, but yeah, I came back way calm. I wish I had kept meditating nonstop the whole time, but
Yeah, it sounds like an extremely difficult thing to do. Listen, before we wrap up, though, tell people about this book. Where can we get it? Why should they buy it? All the information they need.
Yeah.
And there's a link in the bio where they can go on your website and purchase it.
So that's chrisrini.com. The book is called The Fine Art of Violence, Volume 2. And so I'm telling people to be quiet. And it's a collection of MMA art and essays. It chronicles the year 2020, and it tells the story of what happened and the people who were important. The fights were the most exciting or the most dynamic or the most career-changing. Maybe you can hear my 6-year-old in the background. Oh, man. And it's you can get it as a real book, or you can get it as a digital download. The digital download's only $5 this year.
All right, well, there we go. You guys have all the information. Link is in the bio, so for people that are looking for it. And Chris, thank you so much for coming on, man. This is awesome, and it's always great talking to someone that has like a mind that's different from everybody else.
Thank you so much. Oh, by the way, I'm at Bloody Elbow Mondays and Wednesdays at 9 a.m. Eastern time, and also at Rini MMA on Twitter. If you go follow me on Fight Night, I draw the fights live while they're happening with like charcoal and newsprint, and I have a good time doing that too. It's kind of half art, half silly.
All right, well, there we go. Thanks so much for coming on. And for the people that made it to the end, holy shit, you made it to the end, and we'll see you next time.
Lucas, thanks for having me on.